That is actually our First Lady, or President, depending on your perspective, Hillary Rodham Clinton, actually laughing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Day 55 of the Raw Deal. The hostage crisis known as the Clinton presidency. What is happening on our show tonight? By the way, we have an audience tonight of about 2/3 what we normally have. They have made it. They have endured, most of them from out of town, still persevered to get here through this inclement blizzard of 1993, and I want to thank all of you for showing up and taking the risks that you did to get here. It's great to have you with us. They don't even want to applaud themselves. Let me tell you. There's a reason. There's a reason. I told them whatever they do, don't applaud during the opening segment. But it wasn't that. It was, there's something else that I don't want you to applaud. My friends, we thought that we'd cross you up tonight. We always come to the fourth monitor here, and there's a giant question mark in it. Tonight, this is the fourth monitor. We're just going to go in reverse order. We're going to do segment D tonight. This is the one that we maybe never get to, but segment D, Bill Bennett, who is the former education secretary, has just come out with a new thing with this Empower America group he has founded with Jack Kemp. You know how we always have the index of leading economic indicators. They have put out today the index of leading cultural indicators, and it's funny, and it's accurate, and it's facts that you need to back up what you instinctively believe, and we'll show you some of it tonight. Moving backwards. This is Marian Wright Edelman. You will not believe, we have a clip of her. Our man in Washington was on the scene at Children's Defense Fund meeting over the weekend in Washington, actually late last week. She is on the short list for the U.S. Supreme Court. You will not believe it when you hear what she has to say about the past 12 years and what we need to do in the future to take care of our children. First Lady, the wife of the President, Mrs. Bill Clinton. Frankly, I have forgotten why she's even on the show. But I'll remind myself, I'll learn it in plenty of time before we get to it. And we're not going to do a segment A tonight. This is what the question is about. We just reversed them. We're not going to do segment A. I want to show you, ladies and gentlemen, something from our man in Washington over the weekend. Now, this was this at the Children's Defense Fund thing as well? Our man in Washington deigned it necessary to go talk to the Labor Secretary, Robert B. Reich. And as you know, there are numerous bake sales all over the country that little kids are now doing that are designed to raise money to retire the federal debt, reduce the federal deficit, and so forth. Our man in Washington went to Secretary Reich and asked him if he thought this was a good idea. And here's what he said. There's the setting. There's the president even speaking. Our man in Washington there is sneaking in.
What is your comment on the recent bake sales they've had with President Clinton accepting the proceeds from the bake sales from elementary schools? Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think that President Clinton wants to inspire kids and is developing a unique relationship with America's kids. The bake sales, the television program. I know my kids feel, not just because their father is Secretary of Labor, but also because the President has established an independent relationship with them and their friends and all American kids, and very inspired by what's going on.
Is that just, how much substance is that, though, in terms of actually reducing the deficit? Does it make a difference?
Inspiration makes an enormous difference. You can't just live on inspiration. We have to reduce the deficit. We have got to invest in our future and in our kids. We have to have a better educational system. We've got to invest in our youngest kids, just exactly the way the President was talking about it, in terms of making sure that they're ready for school. But don't knock inspiration. I mean, those kids need to believe in their futures. And a president that is that articulate and that compelling can make a big difference.
Now, I know, folks, let me ask you something. Did you listen to what he said? Basically, he thought this bake sale idea is a good idea. It's a rotten idea. It will not work. All it does is orient little kids to do things that don't solve the problem while they think they're out there solving the problem. We did the numbers. We ran the numbers. If you generate $1.5 million with a bake sale every year, it's going to take 2.8 million years to get rid of the national debt. It just doesn't work. But they're serious. Now, wait a second. Wait a second. Wait just a second. These people are serious. I'm telling you, I have told you that what these people are really all about is all they want to do is get into your little kids' minds and make them think that all these worthless little ideas actually work. And they don't. It makes people feel good, but it doesn't solve the problem. Do you notice how serious we say, oh, kids need inspiration, we need inspiration, we need inspiration. It's bogus, folks, and I know it looks funny to you, but I'm telling you, don't. This is a great indication of just exactly what's wrong with this administration. It's just full of symbolism over substance. It really, I mean, it just, you can bear, I mean, wait a minute, no. Don't do this. We'll be back right after, oh, gee. Hi, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Rush Limbaugh television show. Remember, if you're a viewer to this show, relatively new, there's one thing you must know. This show is in a relentless pursuit of the truth. And if you're going to watch this show without getting mad, without getting angry, without becoming irate, without getting upset, without getting your nose out of joint, you're going to have the courage to believe the truth when you watch this show. Because the views expressed by me, the host on this show, make more sense than anything anybody else on the air is saying. And I'm not... That, my friends, is not an excursion into Egoville. That is the truth, and you must have the courage to believe it if watching this show. Now let's move on. Marion Wright Edelman, Chairman, Children's Defense Fund. Hillary has headed this up, as has Donna Shalala. She got Bill on his knees, Shalala. They've all headed up. Very leftist organization. It's really an organization whereby they can get federal funding for whatever they want, their liberal causes, and at the same time do a little male bashing, so in vogue these days. She was asked by our man in Washington, what does the Clinton administration mean now to the children of America? Listen carefully, please. Listen to this entire answer. It's almost a minute long.
Well, I think the election of Clinton, I hope, means a total change in direction. Children were not a priority for the Reagan and Bush administrations. More than $10 billion a year were cut from children's programs, and we are reaping the results of that now. With stopped progress on infant mortality, increased problems with low birth weight, no progress on prenatal care. In fact, we issued a report yesterday showing that we missed meeting 7 out of 8 modest Surgeon General goals for 1990 because we've had a decade of indifference and even hostility to families and children. That, I hope, is changed, and I think in the President's new budget and economic policy package, you see that change in his call for full funding of WIC and Head Start and for immunization and the things that people need in order to raise healthy children.
You know, folks, these people cannot continue to have it both ways. You cannot sit there and blame Reagan for these high deficits because of all this spending, and at the same time sit there and blame Reagan for budget cuts. Now, everybody knows, especially these third graders doing these bake sales to try to reduce our deficit, they know there haven't been any budget cuts. There hasn't been $10 billion cut from children. Head Start was one of George Bush's pet programs, for crying out loud. But the whole idea that money equals healthy children, the whole idea that money equals education, the whole idea that money equals any of this stuff is exactly what's wrong. You don't need... Let's look at drug education, for example. What is drug education? It's one word, no. If you need more than that, it's 3 words. Don't do it. Now, how much money does that take? It's absolutely ridiculous for these people to continue to make this claim. They just want more government in your life. They want more government because that is what empowers them. Now, I want to show you something else from this Children's Defense Fund over the weekend. They had some posters. And our man in Washington showed us, they just indiscriminately showed up on videotape, and I was looking at them in the production meeting this afternoon. I said, whoa, what are those? Look at this. That's the founding fathers, and look at that headline. These fathers are behind in their child support. Well, now, what in the world does that mean? The founding fathers are behind in their child support? What do they still owe us? Well, I mean, really here, folks, I mean, if that doesn't give you a great indication of what these people are all about, government taking care of everybody, and the reason we're in trouble is because those white guys didn't do their jobs, how insulting is that? Here we have the home of the brave, the land of the free, the Purple Mountains majesty, across the fruited plain. We got the greatest country on earth. Ask them anywhere. They'd love to be here. And who are these women to be upset about? It's absolutely just... This is not just a children's organization. It's a bunch of mad, angry feminists on the prowl. Take a look at this sign. Here's another one. Last year, we gave $8 billion in military aid to countries that our undereducated children can't even find on a map. Once again, how much money does it take to point out Nicaragua to a kid? We have a map. Thank you. Thank you. You know, look at this. Here I say something that's just plain simple truth. I am getting rich because I speak the truth. The audience applauds me for speaking the truth. Ought to be so commonplace that I ought to be boring. But I am one of the most celebrated figures in the country today because I happen to tell the truth. We bring a map in here. We show you this country in the Western Hemisphere where the TV show is seen. It doesn't cost us any extra money to show you where Washington, D.C. is. What is the point there with $8 billion? I mean, really, I would love to put it in the show. Hey, we're going to bring the map out. We need another $1 billion in our budget this year. I mean, this really does, I'm going on and on here, but this really does bother me. $8 billion in foreign aid and military aid. Hey, it's worked. I would suggest to these women that the world has at least been made rid of a single great threat to the United States in terms of nuclear holocaust, and it was not money ill-conceived or foolishly spent. Now, there's one more poster. Take a look at this one. Now, that is the rear end of a baby, for those of you in Rio Linda, California. And that's a target there on the rear end. When it's budget-cutting time, they always start with the easiest targets. We're cutting the budget for kids. We're not cutting budgets anywhere. What is this whole administration all about? Cutting the budget. They're saying we finally got to start cutting. We're not cutting the budget anywhere. It's just an entire misnomer. When we come back, I'll get to the statistics that Bill Bennett and Empower America have put out as part of the leading cultural indicators. Right after this. Don't go away. Thank you. Now it's time to dispel another notion. Can you believe that Marian Wright Edelman would say that the Reagan-Bush administration had it in for kids? The problem with this is that it's so easy to hear this stuff and it just, maybe you don't believe it, but it shouldn't, or it doesn't outrage you as much as it should. Nobody can make the case that Ronald Reagan and George Bush hated children or targeted kids or didn't like them. And it's just this emotional appeal to people that these people are trying, and it appears that it's working. But let's look at the facts. You know, the facts always help. In situations where there's conflict, and we have the facts, folks. Empower America, Bill Bennett's organization, he and Jack Kemp, have put out their leading cultural indicators index that's somewhat like the leading index of economic indicators. Follow me on this. Since 1960, the U.S. population has increased 41%. The GDP has nearly tripled. Total social spending by all levels of government has risen from about $150 billion up to almost $800 billion. Social spending is up. Where is this pain and suffering that's been inflicted on kids? That's, by the way, a 5 times increase, just about, 5-fold. Inflation-adjusted spending on welfare is increased by 630%, and education spending is up 225%. And if there's ever any evidence we need that money does not equal smart kids, it's that figure right there. Look at our founding fathers, those guys who apparently still owe us something. How much money do you think it costs to educate those? Those are some of the most brilliant men who've ever walked the planet, and I'll bet you that the amount of money spent on their education wouldn't buy one kid's lunch money. today, for a week, wouldn't equal what his lunch money for a week is. We keep spending we're already spending $6,000 a student. In a class of 30, that's $180,000 with teachers making what, 25? Let's say teachers making 30. That's $150,000 per classroom. Where's it going? We could cater lunch from 21. We could get them to school in limousines, to and fro. And we could hire university professors at $100 grand and still have money left over. This notion that we're not spending enough money. Now, there's more. During the same 30-year period, with all of this spending increase, listen to this, folks. Watch along with me. During the same 30-year period, a 560% increase in violent crime, a 419% increase in illegitimate births, a quadrupling in divorce rates, a tripling of the percentage of children living in single-parent homes, more than a 200% increase in teenage suicide rate, and a drop of almost 80 points in SAT scores. You know what we have? We have a behavioral problem. We have a love problem. We have a spiritual problem. We're spending more money than this country ever thought it would have on all these problems. Government trying to take care of all these problems, this can be shown, may in fact be leading to the deterioration of some of our cultural strength. There's no question about it. When people like Marion Wright Edelman say more money, what we ought to say is, you've got enough money. You have plenty enough money. Why don't you let us get involved with teaching values, teaching right and wrong again, instead of just throwing money at the problem so you can be empowered? We've got to take a break. We'll be back with more right after this. Don't go away. As you know, our Commander-in-Chief, President Clinton, visited an aircraft carrier last week. There are all kinds of stories going on. The sailors on board are telling jokes about the president, showing a lot of disrespect for the president. I wonder why. So the Defense Secretary, Les Aspin, who has a tendency to ramble, was on Meet the Press Sunday to deny the charge, and here's how he tried to do it.
I thought that was a bum rap. I thought that article did not reflect what I saw on the Theodore Roosevelt on that trip. I mean, you had a very good reception by the president there, and you know, Tim, you can always walk around, and depends upon how many people you interview, and eventually you come up with you can write almost any story you want to write. I'm not saying that there weren't 5 people in that crowd that said those things, because I think there were, but I say that does not reflect the attitude of the soldiers, the sailors and the Marines that were on that ship.
Now remember, folks, old Mr. Aspin here, this is the guy who, when we dropped all the food and leaflets and pamphlets and stuff in Bosnia into the hands of the wrong people, the enemy, this is the guy who said it was a successful mission. So I think we have evidence to suggest that he may not know what he's talking about sometimes. Maybe. Now, how much? A minute. I had this cartoon. I have to save it for tomorrow. Let's do the Hillary clip next. Hillary Clinton on health care. Here's another bit of information you've got to absorb. Watch this.
There should not be the need for any large tax increase. The president has ruled out any kind of middle income tax increase to pay for more money going into the same old system.
Now, this is brazen. The president has just announced that anybody who makes $30,000 a year or more is going to have a tax increase. His administration's putting it out. Here's his wife, the First Lady, Mrs. Bill Clinton, saying that there's not going to be a middle-class tax increase, and that there's not going to be a middle-class tax increase on health care. Now, if you believed them the first time, it's okay. You believed them once and they weren't telling you the truth, but are you going to believe them again? I mean, this is like Les Aspin. We dropped it to the wrong guys. It's a successful program. We're not going to raise taxes on the middle class. We just did, but we're not going to ever do it, and we're especially not going to do it again. Folks, I mean, you got to have the courage to believe the truth. We'll be back with our next show soon. Adios.
Services provided and promotional fees paid.